So I'm just going to quickly introduce this session. I want to say welcome everyone for joining the A6 and Z podcast. Normally when I say that, it's something I say by accident on stage because we are not actually often recording the podcast away. But today we are recording this at Stripe, and thank you to you all for being here in our audience to join us for this. And Jeff Jordan and I are here to talk about the growth of marketplace businesses, not just in terms of the evolution and growth of them over time, in terms of milestones and inflection points, but also the growth of marketplace businesses as a category. Because Jeff is unique in that he's seen it all, from the OG marketplace business, eBay, where he also led the acquisition of PayPal, to taking OpenTable public right after one of the worst financial crises in history, and through a recession, and then also investing in and advising and working very closely with all types of marketplace businesses at all stages and sizes, from Airbnb to Instacart to Lime, and so on. And he's now managing partner at Andreessen Horowitz, and basically one of the foremost experts on marketplaces. Let's welcome Jeff Jordan.
Pause. Inhale.
Thank you for being here, Jeff.
Thank you, Sonal. Yeah, this is a little different than we usually do.
I know. Normally we're in a room, just the two of us, without anyone watching, and then I get to edit out all the cuss words. But I guess on this one, we'll just kind of...
I'll try to manage my...
I think I'm the one who has more of a problem with that. Anyway, I guess just to get started, I want to chunk this up into 3 parts. Let's talk about some of the building blocks and measures for marketplace businesses, and then specific issues and challenges in scaling and growing them. So one of my first questions for you is that you have a very unique vantage point, as I've shared, and sort of a pattern recognition. I normally hate that phrase, but in this context, it actually makes sense. And just to give people in the room context, it's funny because I've seen you in the pitch room, and Jeff does this really funny thing where he goes up to people's slides when they're presenting, and he squints and he has his glasses on and he looks at it really closely to look at the numbers and the financials. And it's sort of like looking at the Matrix, and it's like, I see the Matrix, and you see truth in the numbers. And so one of my first questions for you is, what are the key measures for you when it comes to evaluating and really telling apart a good marketplace business from a not so good one?
I mean, what makes marketplaces so interesting from my perspective is if they work, they can be defensible. And the defensibility is network effects. So essentially what I'm looking for as an operator as well as an investor in looking at marketplaces, are there early signs that network effects are happening? And typically, network effects is defined as the business gets more valuable the more people who use it. And so, for example, when I was doing diligence on OpenTable, I said, it was pretty early, I said, just show me San Francisco. I just want to see San Francisco's metrics. It's the oldest market. It should be improving as the number of restaurants and the number of diners scaled. And in that case, every single metric was improving dramatically within each metro. It was not easy to see in aggregate because the total was a blend of a bunch of metros, but when you dissected the early ones, they were just exploding, increasing returns, everything you look at. So that's basically what you're trying to find early.
Right. So I'm hearing basically that obviously that the aggregate picture doesn't really tell you as much as kind of breaking it down. But if you were to dig in, and I of course it varies, and I'm sure all the businesses in this room are very different types of marketplace businesses, but in general, are there 1 or 2 key metrics that are sort of your magic numbers that you just sort of hone in on?
I mean, the big one in marketplace is show me the money. So I look at GMV, listings, and conversion rate. Conversion rate ideally is improving over time, and then share of wallet and things like that. So, but really focused on the financial metrics because that's kind of what tells the marketplace.
So mainly the financials really is a leading indicator there. Okay, so how does this change over time, though? Because you've also seen a lot of this, because the whole theme of this is growth and change over time. What are the points where, especially with all the businesses you've been seeing, especially if they're trying new lines of businesses, trying to expand into new areas or product lines or different models, what are the things that are what you might think of as the catches or the tells or,
I mean, one of the perennial trade-offs is do I go for footprint or monetization kind of thing. When I was at PayPal, I had just taken over, and my board buddy was Scott Cook, founder of Intuit, one of the smartest people I've met in Silicon Valley. He's awesome. And he said, "What are your observations?" And I said, Scott, the good news is there's opportunity everywhere. The challenge is, what do I take on first? And he gave me a mindset that was incredibly helpful to me, which was there's two motions in a network effect business. You can grab land and till land. Grabbing land is increasing your footprint. Tilling land is working on monetization and more money. He goes, you cannot till land you haven't yet grabbed. So your initial motion should be all around grabbing land.
The land grab.
Once you've grabbed it, and if you with network effects, you have the luxury of time to then increase the monetization. And so for me, that's the first motion is grab the land. And then at some point, you get the luxury of saying, okay, now that I have all these users, what can I give them that creates value for them and as a result, value for us?
So then I have a question about scaling and expanding geographies then.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be a perennial question for all types of businesses, which is how do you expand beyond your local market, whatever that is, a geographic local market, a contained locality, or international expansion. And everyone says, I've worked with a lot of our founders, and they talk about like, I just really need to grow into new markets, but how do you know when to do that?
Well, for me, the key is securing your initial market such that you've won it, and then expanding from there. So in truly local marketplace businesses like OpenTable or Instacart, you are literally going market by market and trying to win. And so you work hard early to get product market fit in that market. Once you get it, you have to go really fast because others will have watched what you're doing. And for me, one of the counterexample was Grubhub, where Seamless won New York in the corporate market. Campus Food won the universities. Grubhub was in the suburbs. And they ended up being just a huge roll-up. That meant that the Grubhub shareholders got diluted each time they bought different pieces of the network. And so ideally, you don't want that situation. You want to go grab it. And so Instacart, I think they're talking later today, was fascinating. And once they figured out, got product market fit, had comfort they were working, they went basically national in a year and a half. And it was very impressive to see.
I'm going to push you harder on this one, though, because I am sure people in the room are wondering, can you do then two markets at the same time? Like, let's say, okay, you grab it and own it, but could you say, for instance, try to own San Francisco and New York at the same time, and then go to the next one? Like, is it sort of a linear thing, a non-linear thing? Is it a partial linear, non-linear thing? Like, how do you really think?
I think there are differences by market. OpenTable happened to be one of the slowest marketplace builds I've ever experienced because you had to go restaurant by city, but then restaurant by restaurant. It would take you a few years to secure enough restaurants to make it interesting for diners. Now, once the diners got interested, the restaurants would run to the door, but that was really slow. In others, you advocate go as fast as you can, because once you've won the core market, go win as many more markets as you can, and once you've won your country, go abroad as fast as you can, kind of thing. But that's the trade-off is speed versus quality in that.
Right. Well, speaking of speed versus quality and this sort of balance between, I love how you described it as tilling versus owning the land, grabbing the land versus tilling it. As you scale a business, because that's the big question here as well, sort of hyper-scaling, I don't love that phrase either, but just really scaling, growing fast. How do you make that trade-off? Because let's be honest, you can't really do both at the same time. Very few people are really truly staffed up to truly execute on all cylinders, and if they are, great, but not everyone in this room has that. It's like trust. That's a really big topic. How do you think about trust, and what are some of your biggest lessons learned there?
I mean, the interesting in trust, when we were at eBay, we were there was no playbook. No one had built an online marketplace, and so we were making up along the way. One thing that became obvious, it's called trust and safety.
TNS.
Trust comes when the marketplace is actually safe. So the real question is safety. And so at eBay, there was a small percentage of transactions that would not be safely conducted. And so early on, that was a really small number, but that's a small percentage of transactions. As eBay grew order of magnitude, became huge over time. And so we ended up viewing it as our responsibility to make the marketplace absolutely as safe as we can, and then that derivatively would help people trust the marketplace. So the platform is responsible for safety. And it's so easy to say, oh, that's not our job, but ultimately it's your job, because the user experience on both sides of the marketplace is going to be contingent on actually making it safe.
Right. So even if you're not technically a quote managed marketplace where you have like the vetting layer and a certification layer, other models in between, you are always ultimately responsible.
Yeah. No. I mean, and then the proof of that usually comes when people say, I'm going to put my money behind the safety. So at eBay, we debuted the buyer protection program. It was the first, instead of just saying it's the Wild West, make a good decision, we would say, if you do these behaviors, we will stand behind the transaction. And we gradually increase that. When Airbnb, right after we invested, a former host had blogged about a terrible experience where a meth addict got into her apartment and trashed it. I mean, it was really well written, unfortunately. The reality there was we put a few weeks, the management team did all the work, but a few weeks and retooled their entire approach to trust and safety, including they came out with the Airbnb guarantee at $50,000 per host, and they made it retroactive to day one of the business. And so that was putting your money where your mouth is, and that made the business a much better business.
Yeah.
It created trust for the host, created trust for the guests, and Airbnb then knows it has to manage a safe marketplace. If not, they will just they'll hemorrhage money.
How do they communicate that back to their users? I know it's a really tactical question, but I always wonder when it comes to that sort of thing, because there's so many ways. Like, do you do a press release? Is that sort of performative? Do you?
All that stuff is nice. You have to do it with great product integration. It has to be contextually there. If I'm thinking of listing my apartment, and Airbnb now has a $50,000 guarantee, as I'm thinking of listing my place, it should be square in front that, oh, by the way, do you know that, if you list your place, we will stand behind it for $50,000. By the way, that number is now $1 million, because as they got more experience, they took on more risk. And so the biggest thing, though, is product integration. You can do press releases, you can buy marketing campaigns. The product has to market itself.
Right, that's fantastic. So in terms of other specific issues and challenges that people might come across as they scale and grow their business, how do you think about pricing? And in particular, because that's a huge question, how do you think about it when a marketplace business is in a really competitive environment, when you're not the first one and everyone else is either imitating you, or there are knockoffs, or there's other variations that people can go elsewhere? You're tempted to just cut prices fast. Like, is that the only strategy people have, or?
I mean, I believe the supply side of the marketplace, which is typically the one who pays, will be willing to pay for service as long as you're providing them with great value. So ultimately, when we were running eBay, both Yahoo and Amazon, the gorillas of the day, it's hard to remember the day when Yahoo was a gorilla, but they were the gorillas of the day. They launched an auction product where the listings were free. Now, we were charging. Every seller tried Yahoo auctions, every seller tried Amazon auctions. The buyers weren't there, they didn't get the same yield, so they quickly came back to eBay in spite of our fees, which weren't exorbitant, but were meaningful. And because we were delivering volume, we were delivering sales, we were helping them be economically empowered, which is what they wanted.
Would you then argue that people should charge more? I mean, obviously, if they have the service, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a little bit careful, because in eBay's case, in most network effects businesses, you rarely get disrupted by another aspirant doing exactly what you're doing. I call it, you don't worry about your rear view window when you're running a marketplace that's working. Worry about the orthogonal things that come in from the side. Two things happen to eBay over time that make it, it's doing about the same amount of business now as it did when I managed it, which is kind of bizarre. But the two things were, eBay was how to buy hard-to-find things. Google came along and made it easier to find hard-to-find things. And so this came home to me. I was at an Intuit conference for Scott Cook, and the speaker after me was Sheryl Sandberg. And she gets on stage and is talking about the early days of Google, and she goes, we knew early on our key competitor was eBay.
Inhale.
Yahoo, Microsoft? No, they were focused on eBay,
Pause.
which was fascinating. The other was Amazon.
Exhale.
Use their retail footprint to offer a marketplace and integrated the
Pause.
listings onto their core marketplace, which was really well done. That one we
Inhale.
saw coming and fought really hard. We didn't see the Google thing coming till it was probably too late.
Pause.
Oh, that's great. Let's talk about payments, because
Exhale.
it seems obvious because we're at Stripe sessions, but honestly, from my perspective,
Pause.
as a layperson approaching this, I would think of payments as a utility, and of course it's a strategic advantage. So it could be considered fungible or not fungible in some circumstances.
Exhale.
And so I'm really curious from your particular experience on the front lines of eBay
Pause.
and PayPal, how you navigated that whole build versus buy
Inhale.
decision.
So this was interesting. We actually had a
Pause.
digital payment play called BillPoint early at eBay. And
Exhale.
actually, we had bought it as I was joining the company. So I'm managing the eBay
Pause.
marketplace, and the way payment was done at eBay in the early days was you'd win an auction, the buyer and the seller would email each other,
Pause.
negotiate the shipping costs, and then the buyer would
Exhale.
go get a money order from a bank or the post office. And if it was from the bank, then it had another trip to go to the post office to mail the money order
Inhale.
to the seller, who would get the money order, make sure it was good, and then ship the product.
Pause.
That would be called friction. I mean, it would take a
Exhale.
couple weeks to finish a payment thing. So we knew that right up front, and so we bought BillPoint, which was
Inhale.
not a good purchase. And the PayPal guys kind of stumbled
Pause.
into the fact that their product
Exhale.
could cure this huge pain point for buyers and sellers on the
Pause.
marketplace. So they went out and through a very ingenious
Inhale.
$5-10 bounty paid to the sellers. The sellers acquired all the buyers on eBay on behalf of PayPal. So quickly,
Exhale.
the eBay cart became PayPal. Now, because we had a payments product, we were hiding PayPal,
Inhale.
trying to benefit our product, but we were actually, believe it or not, worried about antitrust violations, and Reid Hoffman assiduously played into those
Exhale.
fears and
Right.
kept us from doing really good integration. So finally, I was managing the largest e-commerce company in America where users couldn't find the cart to pay for an item. They knew how to buy it, they didn't know how to pay for it. So I was listening to customer support calls one day, and here's a woman in tears. I bought the Charizard card for my son for Christmas. It's 4 days
Inhale.
before Christmas. I can't find how to pay. What's
Oh
this
my God.
PayPal thing? And you're like, oh shit, we're dead. So I was the proponent of buying
Exhale.
PayPal, and it took 5 separate engagements to actually get it done. You know, we'd say, we'll offer 200, and they go, our price is 400.
Inhale.
9 months later, we'll offer 400, our price is 800. And
Yeah.
that kept going until they were public. And once they're public, the price was marked. And we
Exhale.
bought it, I think, for $1.6 billion. And I think I looked yesterday, it was $130 billion now. My pitch to the board was PayPal will be bigger than
Inhale.
eBay. That one came true.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, from the
Pause.
inside, I mean, that's a great story. What advice would you have for people in the room who are trying to do a similar kind of advocacy from the inside on
Pause.
the build versus buy question? Like, do they show the data? Because in your case, you
Inhale.
managed the cart, you had this clear friction, but it's not so cut and dry all the
Pause.
time. Like, how do you really convince people that have to be the buyers in the
Exhale.
end that I want to do it this way?
Yeah, I mean, building a payments
Pause.
product is hard. I mean, I've done it. I've done it now. A couple of my companies are trying to do it again. I mean, there was, PayPal in the day was today's Stripe equivalent. So the biggest
Exhale.
thing for me, payments does 2 things. It makes it easy and it makes it safe. eBay was a much safer
Inhale.
venue to trade on once we knew with complete clarity whether the buyer and the seller had successfully finished the
Exhale.
transaction. eBay put them together. PayPal told us did the money flow work. And so our pitch to the Department of Justice, which I got to do, was that information will make the venue safer
Yeah.
for consumers and sellers, and it did in a very
Exhale.
meaningful way. So as long as you can get the ease of use and get your safety lined up,
Inhale.
unless you're an extraordinary scale, dedicating a lot of resources to building a payment mark for me isn't the best use of your marginal
Exhale.
and very expensive engineering resource.
Right, so it comes right back down to trust and
Pause.
safety and security in that case. So let's zoom out a bit
Inhale.
and talk about some macro trends in the evolution of marketplaces. In particular, I
Pause.
saw a Financial Times headline or story that eBay that Shopify actually surpassed eBay in market cap, as did Mercado Libre, which is an Argentinian company with a similar marketplace business. And I'm just really curious for what this means in terms of overall trends in these businesses. Did eBay just sort of reach like a peak, and then it's like an inevitable gravity? Was there something they might have done differently to stay ahead so that Shopify didn't